Yo guys, RDS here, Red Marvel, all the rest back again on Red Devil Multiverse. Today doing a review on X-Men 97, one of the shows that I loved as a kid, and love it now. And yeah, just giving my thoughts. I thought season one was a great follow-up. But obviously behind the scenes, the Mayo guy who wrote, was the script director, did left, and I think that's one of the things I'm going to sort of mention in this season, because I still think overall the season was good. I think it was good. I still think compared to a lot of Marvel TV shows, it's good. And we're hearing Marvel going for more animated stuff in the future, which I don't know if it's a good or bad thing. The whole thing with animated shows or any show is that at the end of the day, a lot of it's going to be based on the writing. Is the writing good or not? Yes or no at the end of the day, you know? So, and in the case of X-Men 97 season one, it definitely was good. The problem for me, I think, was that with X-Men season two, you can kind of see the situation whereby you have um, a a there's it's clearly obviously been changes in leadership, and I think one of the biggest issues um, is that we see that kind of halfway through in the sort of the direction that I think the show takes. Now, for me, I think this season started off really good. Obviously, going in, following up from season one with the aftermath of obviously Gambit's death and Apocalypse also being around, and you see obviously there's a foreshadowing of him, getting Gambit's body, and obviously Nathan as a kid going kind of to the future and past, and the relationship between Scott and Nathan and Jean. You see obviously what the different teams going to the past, present, and future. The present team with Jubilee, basically essentially part of X Force on by Cable, trying to find Apocalypse and what have you, doing not exactly ideal things, clashing with another mutant team called X Factor, joined by the government, who want to try and make life better for mutants, but also rounding up mutants. And obviously, this goes into the rise of Apocalypse, because some of the X Men team go back to the past. The with the Nightcrawler, Beast, I think Rogue, Professor X, and Magneto. Um, with the rise of Apocalypse, and then the follow up, the fourth part, which is the halfway scene, which is the Rise Book Part Two. You see Apocalypse as a beast, as an enemy, as someone not to be messed with. He kills Magneto, obviously, and for me, that season four episode was probably the high. I'd say the highest in terms of the overall storyline. But after that, and a part of me is like feels like this season could have done with a few more episodes. I know in the 90s, episodes kind of went to different angles. You had a lot of side episodes and journeys, etc., which I think is fine. I have no issue with the episodes are good in themselves, and they were. The problem though is that those I think you need to have that in a longer season. Because if you do that, when you then want to sort of wrap up the season, which is what Showrunner did, it did feel a little bit rushed at the end. When we look at the second half of this season, yes, the Logan episode, Weapon X getting back his claws, but again, it felt a little bit rushed, just because I think it was good seeing the relationship that Logan had with obviously other Weapon X buddies, but these guys came out of nowhere. No real, Wolverine and Sabretooth have a lot of chemistry. And it just felt kind of like, right, okay, yeah, Sabretooth, okay, back, gone, whatever. Okay, he's got his adamantium claws back again. That's it. When it was such a big deal with him being ripped out, it just kind of was just like, right, all resolved in episode. I mean, okay, I guess. Um, the Danger episode, I mean, okay, fair enough. Danger, new character, fine. Eh, Fine, I guess. I think it was good. That episode was good to kind of, see Polaris, come into her own and come back, and that was fine. And I think there's another criticism I have of the show is that um, when sort of now getting to, this is why I think there need to be more episodes. Too many character syndrome. The X-Men have tons of characters, and we saw it, to be honest, with the openings. I think the last episode they showed pretty much every character, and it literally showed every character's intro, and then you got to like the end credit bit at the intro. That shows you, for me, how many characters. too many characters, I think, and they needed more episodes to flesh them out because a lot of characters from season one took a backseat. You know, we didn't really hear a lot from Forge. We didn't really see a lot from Storm. Even arguably Wolverine. Okay, yes, he got one episode to get his claws back, um, but he shared that with a couple of other characters, and that was it. He took a backseat. Not really much from Beast. Okay, he did a few things. I mean, I would say the standout characters in the season, the main ones, were probably Cable, obviously with a Cable Apocalypse, obviously, um, Gambit and Rogue, a bit of Magneto before he stayed, and probably Nightcrawler, um, and the leader of X Factor, and Charles. Everyone else, I think, just takes a back seat in this. Always feels like secondary, and then you're obviously trying to give them what Jubilee is a bit more prominent, so I'll give them that. But then they try and give more screen time to like Polaris and Bishop, for example, to come into it. So there's just too many characters to judge in this, and I think that's why I think for me season two um, is a little bit more of a struggle with how things are. I look at the final two episodes. Um, I must confess that episode seven, that was my favorite episode of the season. I love Nightcrawler. For me is one of the best characters. I think he was probably the MVP of the season, one of the X MVPs, just purely because of his philosophy. Yes, he's religious, his faith, but he actually epitomizes what it actually means to be a true believer, a true Christian, Catholic, so on. And you can clearly see that Nightcrawler's belief, his faith, is arguably the only, um, way to resolve the conflict. And you see his relationship with his brother, who I didn't even know I could feel some empathy to Creed. But I mean, in a way, it's interesting because Graydon Creed, who now you find in the scene is now president, he it's weird because he's a friend of humanity, he's a human, but actually he hates being human. He actually hates himself because he was raised by Sabretooth. Sabretooth was waiting for him to be like to become a mutant, to have power. And so he almost hates the fact that like he couldn't do that. Because if he could be a mutant, he wouldn't have got all the abuse that Sabretooth gave him. Which is where the empathy simply goes in episode 7. And then at the end where he's just like, you know what, he ends up shooting Exodus, who looked amazing, by the way. Exodus should be back because I don't know Exodus to be killed by a gun. Let's relax. Exodus is a powerful mutant. He shouldn't be killed by a gun anyway. But he's also a believer. But Exodus, doing that, and Nightcrawler, trapping Graydon in the snow, letting him be taken off, stuff like that. Not acting out the revenge. It's clear Nightcrawler's path is like the path, if that makes any sense. So for me, that was a really good episode. But this is what I'm saying. It's just that some of the stand-ups were good. They were fine. They were okay. But then you get to like the last 2 episodes, and you're trying to round things up with kind of Gambit as death and Apocalypse being back, and then it's a weird thing that Apocalypse is kind of okay, using Gambit as a host body to come back and do his thing, and then the external, and he loved Apocalypse loved it. I just felt that they rushed the end 2 episodes, and then you got Survival of the Fittest, where Rogue goes to the a Celestial to get the power to defeat Apocalypse, gets the power to kind of put Apocalypse into this kind of crystal thing, but then you see that Nightcrawler has to sacrifice himself, because if you're going to get that, you've got to sacrifice something in your life, etc. And that's what Nightcrawler does, and that's why he's the MVP. That's why he's the GOAT of the season, quite frankly. He made the ultimate sacrifice for them to live and do their thing, which is great. But I just felt that I think especially because of how they built up Apocalypse as such a menace midway through, and then to kind of end this way, it was like, oh, okay. I mean, it's fine, but there's just something missing. And I think maybe that's where you can sort of start to see the shift. It almost became a bit more Disney-fied, as it were, which worries me a little bit, because you can clearly see there's influence from first season to this. Is the next season, is that going to be, a bit? But I mean, we saw obviously that the post-credit scene, you saw um you saw essentially Mystique assassinate. Well, I don't know if she's assassinated, she shot him. Whether she's dead or not remains to be seen, but she's taking the lead of impersonating the leader of X Factor. I've forgotten her name. And she's taken the lead there. So whether or not she uses X Factor and turns them into criminals, or I don't know what she's going to do, but I suspect the Brotherhood of Evil is going to be back, and we're going to get into presumably a kind of Days of Futures Past scenario as well, or an Onslaught scenario. I don't really know. The other things as well, I think that threw me off a little bit. The two other things that threw me off for the season is one, I know Charles Xavier and Magneto were, obviously close, they're friends, etc. But I thought his reaction to Magneto dying was a little bit weird, especially given what he did to Logan in the first season, ripping his thing out, almost killing the world, all the rest of it, and the attack that Xavier did on Magneto's mind. So to do that and then to kind of be like, sorry guys, sorry. Be like that and then to sort of be like Magnus, as if they were almost like lovers. It's like, bro, you have a wife. Lalandra. Lalandra is who you should be fawning over. Your wife, Lalandra. Her, remember her? We got no reference back to the girl you love. No reference to her at all in this season. It was just a little bit weird for me, a bit too much. Like, even the death thing is fine, but everything after that, it was almost like, bro, you fought this guy for goodness knows so long. He's committed so many crimes and some things. Yes, he should, he's just still your friend, and you don't want to see your friend be killed in that manner, etc. Especially with support, I get it. But the manner in which it was massive, I just thought it was just a bit odd, to be honest. With his kind of reaction was a bit odd to me. The other thing as well was that I didn't quite understand in the build-up in the first few episodes. You had Apocalypse in the future say, I need to attack the X-Men at their weakest, and he goes back to the 90s. And then you have the Apocalypse from the past. So I was a little bit confused because the Apocalypse in the past is the one that resurrected Gambit and took his card, because there was Apocalypse there. But then you have Apocalypse from the future that's going to go back to the 90s. So I don't know whether that's referencing something. Shouldn't there be two Apocalypses technically walking around? Or did Apocalypse think that way before he then went to resurrect Gambit or something? It's a bit weird because the plans seem to change, because the Apocalypse from the future was like, they're weak, I need to go and take them from the 90s. Whereas the Apocalypse that captured Gambit was like, well, clearly he needed a new body. His body was dying, etc. And so that's why he presumably uses Gambit to resurrect himself, etc., to transform and so on. Why would the Apocalypse from the future needs his body to be? That wasn't really clear to me, to be honest. And if anyone knows in the comments, please let me know. Love the new X uniforms. That was great, but I'm interested to see where they go from here. Because I really thought they were going to go into kind of a proper telling of Age of Apocalypse in this one. They didn't, although they talked about Apocalypse origin. Shout out to Kang, by the way, the actual Kang, not a certain person. Did a good job as well. Honorable mention, and the cameos were nice, Morph and so on. So, but I don't know where they go from here. We're apparently getting a season every year from now. For how many, I don't know, but because there's tons of X-Men stories. So I don't know where they go. Maybe they go with Chris Claremont stuff or something. I don't know. I would like to see if it was me, and I'll end here because it's gone on for way too long. But I would definitely like to see with Days of Future Past been done to death so many times. I'm sorry. We need to move on. For Age of Apocalypse would have been nice, but it is what it is. I would probably like to see maybe like a House of M situation, especially with the Avengers. I think that would be kind of nice. An Avengers versus X-Men scenario adapted for this team, I think, would be pretty cool as well. What other stories? Dark X-Men as well, kind of like Dark Reign type of sort of thing. So there are plenty, and there are plenty of stories. They've already done Dark Phoenix. You can't do that as well. So there are plenty of stories I think that they could adapt, they could bring to the screen and really sort of change things. So, but let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Remember, if you're new to the channel, to like, share, and subscribe to Red Devil Multiverse. Let me know what you think about the show. Like and comment below. Have a nice day, guys, and cheers. Peace.